All right, everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be tackling a topic that I think strikes fear in the heart of, well, pretty much everyone who's ever worked in a corporate setting.
Oh, yeah. Those two little words, internal audit.
Exactly, you hear those, and suddenly you're picturing mountains of paperwork and endless questions
Mhm.
and that sinking feeling like you're about to be put under a microscope.
Yeah, it's like a collective shiver runs down everyone's spine.
Right. But what if I told you that this whole auditor is the villain thing is more myth than reality?
Oh, I like where this is going.
Today, we're going to try to debunk some of those common myths about auditors and really uncover what their role is all about.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Well, we found this really insightful conversation online called Debunking Myths About Auditors. It's basically a dialogue between this person named Alex, who's clearly dreading an upcoming audit, and Sam, who's an auditor themselves.
So we're basically going to be deep diving into their conversation.
Exactly. And I think it's a great starting point because Alex really captures that initial fear factor that a lot of us feel.
Oh, yeah. You can practically hear the anxiety in their voice when they mention the audit.
Right. It's that whole brace yourself, chaos is coming feeling. But then Sam comes in and offers this completely different perspective that I found really eye-opening.
They compared auditors to doctors.
Yes, but not in the way you might think.
Right. It's not about auditors being these intimidating figures in white coats. It's about them diagnosing the financial health of an organization.
Oh, I see. So just like a doctor would look for early warning signs of a health issue, auditors are trained to spot potential risks and weaknesses in the financial processes of a company.
Exactly. And the goal isn't to find fault or punish anyone. It's about identifying those areas for improvement and preventing problems before they even arise.
Okay, so it's more about preventative care than coming in to tear everything apart.
Precisely. And to put it in even more concrete terms, think about it like this. Let's say an auditor discovers a recurring error in how payroll is calculated.
That might seem minor on the surface, but those kinds of errors can really add up over time.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it could lead to employees not being paid correctly, potential legal issues for the organization, a whole mess.
So catching that error early on protects everyone involved.
Right. It ensures that employees are being treated fairly, and it safeguards the organization from those financial and legal headaches.
Okay, I can see how that's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
But I think some people listening might still be thinking, sure, the intention is good, but audits are still a huge disruption.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, nobody wants to be pulled away from their regular work to answer a million questions and dig through mountains of paperwork.
And Alex actually brings that up in the conversation, too.
Yeah.
They talk about how the audit is taking them away from their actual job, and it's causing a lot of stress.
Right. And that feeling of inconvenience is definitely valid. But let's think about it this way. What if those short-term disruptions are actually saving you from much bigger headaches down the road?
It's like short-term pain for long-term gain.
Exactly, because we're not just talking about minor inconveniences here. We're talking about potentially preventing things like fraud, weak internal controls, the kind of issues that could seriously damage an organization.
Yeah, not just the organization, right? What about the people who work there?
Exactly. Unaddressed financial risks can lead to job losses, damaged reputations, and even have ripple effects throughout entire industries. It's like a chain reaction.
So auditors are really there to protect everyone involved, the organization, the employees, even the broader economy.
Absolutely. And that's a perspective that often gets lost in all the anxiety and stress surrounding audits.
Okay, I'm starting to see how that preventative medicine analogy really plays out. But there's still that lingering image of auditors being the bearers of bad news, right?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common perception, and it makes sense. Nobody likes being told they've made a mistake.
Alex even says something like that in the conversation. They talk about how they're afraid of getting called into the principal's office.
It's that feeling of, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? But here's a question. Would you rather know about a problem when it's small and manageable, or wait until it blows up into a full-blown crisis?
Oh, I'm definitely a rip the Band-Aid off kind of person.
Exactly. And that's essentially what auditors are doing. They're providing that early warning system, highlighting areas that need attention before they escalate into something much bigger.
So they're not just there to point fingers, they're actually helping to find solutions.
Exactly. Sam really emphasizes that in the conversation. It's not just about identifying weaknesses. It's about working together to strengthen those internal controls and create more robust systems.
So it's less about blame and more about finding ways to improve things.
Precisely. And that collaborative approach is really at the heart of what auditors do. They're not adversaries. They're partners in success.
Partners in success, I like that. But what does that actually look like in practice? How do we move from this mindset of fear and apprehension to one of collaboration and trust?
That's a great question. And it's one we're going to explore in more detail after a quick break.
Sounds good. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. And we were talking about how to actually make that shift from auditor as the enemy to auditor as a partner.
Right. It's about changing that whole dynamic and turning the audit process into something that's actually beneficial for everyone involved.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, where do we even begin?
Well, I think it starts with communication, like really open and honest communication. And for those who are being audited, it's about being transparent with the auditor. Don't treat them like they're the enemy.
So, like, instead of trying to hide things or downplay any potential problems, just be upfront and say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. What do you think?
Exactly. Invite their feedback. They've seen a lot of different systems and processes, so they might have insights that you hadn't even considered. They can be a valuable resource.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's kind of like, instead of trying to avoid getting caught, you're actually inviting them in to help you find ways to improve.
Exactly. And on the flip side, I think auditors can do a lot to foster that collaborative spirit, too. It's about approaching the audit with a genuine desire to help the organization improve, not just to find faults.
Right, because nobody likes feeling like they're being judged or punished. It's got to be more about working together to find solutions.
Absolutely. And that might involve things like recommending changes to internal controls or suggesting ways to improve documentation, or even providing training for staff on best practices. It's all about working together.
So it's less about you did this wrong and more about how can we do this better?
Exactly. It's a partnership, not a battle. And I think that brings us back to one of Sam's key points in that conversation we were talking about. They see auditors as partners in success, not adversaries. They're there to help create a more transparent, trustworthy, and stable financial environment for everyone.
It's almost like they're the unsung heroes of the financial world, working behind the scenes to keep everything running smoothly.
I love that. Unsung heroes. And this reframing, the shift from watchdog to partner, it can dramatically change the whole experience of an audit. Think about it. If you view the auditor as someone who's there to help you improve, wouldn't you be more open to collaborating with them?
Absolutely. Instead of trying to hide things, you'd actually want to bring them in and say, hey, let's take a look at this together and see if we can make it even better.
Exactly. And that's the kind of positive dynamic that emerges when we change our perspective on audits. But, it's one thing to talk about this in theory, but how do we actually put it into practice? What are the tangible steps that both sides can take to create that kind of collaborative environment?
That's a great question. And it's one we're going to continue to explore right after this.
Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
All right, so we're back, and, we've been talking about this whole shift in perspective when it comes to audits, moving away from that fear and anxiety.
Right, and embracing that more collaborative approach.
Exactly. But I think it's important to acknowledge that, not everyone has had positive experiences with audits in the past.
Oh, absolutely. Some people have probably encountered auditors who fit that old stereotype. The ones who are just looking for mistakes and ready to pounce on any little thing they can find.
Right. And those kinds of experiences can definitely make people apprehensive about future audits. So how do we move past those negative associations and create a more positive starting point?
Well, I think a big part of it is just remembering that auditors are people, too.
Oh, yeah, they're not robots.
Exactly. They have their own experiences, their own perspectives, and, they probably even get nervous sometimes, too.
Yeah, that makes sense. So approaching the process with a little bit of empathy can go a long way.
Absolutely. What if instead of seeing the auditor as an adversary, you tried to see them as a consultant, someone who's there to help you improve your systems and processes?
It's about recognizing that you're both on the same team working towards the same goal.
Right. But, even with that shift in mindset, I think a lot of people might still be worried about what happens if they've made a mistake.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Like, what if I messed something up and I didn't even realize it? A scary thought.
And that fear is totally understandable. But it goes back to that old gotcha mentality that we're trying to move away from. Remember, audits aren't about punishment, they're about improvement. If an auditor finds an error, their main goal is to help you understand why it happened and how to prevent it from happening again.
So it's about learning from those mistakes and making things better in the future.
Exactly. And that's why open communication is so important. If you've made a mistake, own up to it. Don't try to hide it. Be upfront with the auditor, explain what happened, and be open to their suggestions for improvement.
They might have seen similar situations before and have some really helpful advice.
Right, they can be a valuable resource.
Yeah.
So instead of being afraid of getting caught, try to see it as an opportunity to learn and grow.
It's about shifting that mindset from fear to collaboration.
Exactly. And remember that collaborative spirit should extend beyond the individual audit itself. Auditors play a much bigger role in the overall health and stability of the financial system.
They're kind of like the watchdogs, making sure everyone is playing by the rules.
Right.
Yeah.
They help ensure transparency and accountability, which ultimately benefits everyone.
So it's not just about individual organizations, it's about creating a stronger, more trustworthy financial world for all of us.
And that's something we can all get behind.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I hope our listeners are walking away with a fresh perspective on auditors and the important role they play.
Yes, remember, audits don't have to be scary. By embracing transparency, communication, and that collaborative spirit, we can turn them into opportunities for growth improvement and a stronger financial future for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and keep diving deep.